The Whis, a fantasy sleep story, presented by Bedtime Stories. Make yourself comfortable, close your eyes, take a slow, deep breath. And now, let the story begin. The Vale of Whispering Bloom was not a place found on any map, nor could its entrance be stumbled upon by chance. It lay nestled high in the forgotten peaks of the cloud-kissed mountains, a secret cradle of emerald and silver, where the very air hummed with a soft, ancient magic. Here the trees weren't merely green, their leaves shimmered with an inner light, and the flowers pulsed with gentle, rhythmic glows that painted the twilight in hues unknown to the outside world. Elara knew every winding path of the vale, every secret grotto where Lumina moss grew brightest, and every pool where the stardust moths gathered, their wings dusting the water with iridescent flecks. But more than the visible wonders, Elara knew the Whis. The Whis were not things you could touch, or hold, or even truly see with ordinary eyes. They were echoes, fragments of starlight, slivers of forgotten dreams, and the faintest sighs of ancient winds. They danced on the breeze like motes of pure potential, shimmering just at the edge of perception, like the memory of a bell ringing or the scent of rain before it falls. Most people in the Vale, even those attuned to its gentle magic, perceived the Whis as nothing more than a feeling, a sudden warmth, a fleeting sense of peace, or the inexplicable urge to hum a forgotten tune. But Elara was different. From the time she was a small child, Elara had seen the Whis. Not clearly, not like seeing a bird on a branch, but as faint, shimmering currents of light, like heat rising from a summer road, or the distortion of air above a glowing ember. She heard them too, not as words, but as a delicate symphony of almost sounds, the rustle of silk, the whisper of dry leaves across stone, the distant sigh of the ocean, all woven into a barely audible melody that only she could truly discern. They were everywhere in the Vale. They gathered around the oldest trees, invigorating their roots with unseen currents of life. They swirled through the streams, making the water taste sweet and pure. They collected in the heart of the Lumina moss, causing it to glow with its soft, comforting light. The Whis were the lifeblood of the Vale of Whispering Bloom, the unseen hands that tended its magic and kept its wonders vibrant. Elara's days were often spent in quiet observation, sitting by the sun-dappled falls, a place where the Whis were particularly abundant. She'd close her eyes, letting her other senses open, and the world would transform. The roar of the water would soften into a lullaby, the scent of damp earth and blooming night lilies would deepen, and the faint, shimmering currents of the Whis would become more distinct. She'd reach out, not with her hand, but with a part of her spirit, and feel their ephemeral touch, a fleeting coolness, a spark of joy, a whisper of an ancient memory. Sometimes, if she was very still and very quiet, a particularly vibrant Whis would settle near her, its shimmering form intensifying, and she'd feel a warmth spread through her chest, like drinking sunshine. Her grandmother, Lyra, understood Elara's unique gift. Lyra was the oldest living soul in the Vale, her face a tapestry of gentle wrinkles, her eyes like polished river stones, deep and knowing. She moved with a quiet grace, her hands skilled in weaving baskets from glowing willow branches and brewing teas from the rarest bloom petals. Lyra had taught Elara the names of the ancient trees, the language of the singing stones, and the subtle shifts in the Vale's mood. But most importantly, Lyra had taught Elara to listen to the Whis. "They are the breath of the Vale, child," Lyra would say, her voice soft as moss. Each one a tiny spark of creation, carrying echoes from before time. They mend, they nourish, they dream, and sometimes they remember. Elara often wondered what the Whis remembered. She'd felt flashes of images from them, a soaring bird with wings of fire, a deep, resonant hum that felt like the heart of the world, a faint scent of a flower that no longer grew in the Vale. These glimpses were like looking through a keyhole into a vast, forgotten mansion, tantalizing and brief. One crisp morning, as the first rays of the sun spilled over the cloud-kissed mountains, painting the Vale in hues of rose and gold, Elara felt a subtle shift. She was tending the morning dew lilies, whose petals collected tiny droplets of pure luminous water that tasted of cool moonlight. Usually, as she moved among them, the Whis would dance and swirl, disturbed by her presence but quickly resettling, their gentle whispers a constant hum. Today, however, the hum was fainter. The shimmering currents were less numerous, less vibrant. She paused, her hand hovering over a lily. The droplets of dew on its petals seemed a little less bright-eyed. She closed her eyes, focusing. The symphony of whispers was muted, like an orchestra playing behind a thick curtain. A prickle of unease, unfamiliar and sharp, touched her heart. Later, as she walked towards the whispering willows, their long silvery leaves usually rustled with a constant chorus of unseen voices, she noticed a silence. The typical playful currents of Whis that danced among their branches were absent. The air felt thinner, somehow, less alive. The willows themselves seemed to droop a little more, their usual vibrant silver green dulled to a softer, almost weary shade. Elara spent the rest of the day wandering through the vale, her senses heightened, searching for answers. She visited the Lumina Moss Grotto, where the moss usually pulsed with a soft, steady glow that lit the darkest corners. Today, patches of the moss were dim, some completely dark, their inner light guttering like dying embers. The Whis that usually clustered there, feeding the moss with their vitality, were almost completely gone. Only a few faint, almost translucent strands drifted listlessly. By the time she returned to her grandmother's cottage, a small, cozy dwelling built into the side of a moss-covered hill, Elara's heart was heavy. The cottage itself, usually a haven of warmth and quiet magic, felt different too. The fireflies that often drifted through the windows at dusk, drawn by the inner glow of the cottage, were fewer. The gentle hum that always resonated from the enchanted hearth, where Lyra kept a perpetual flame, was barely perceptible. Lyra was stirring a pot of dream petal broth over the hearth, its sweet earthy aroma usually filling the room with comfort. But even the broth seemed to lack its usual vibrancy. Lyra looked up as Elara entered, her deep eyes immediately reading the concern on her granddaughter's face. "The Whis are quiet today, aren't they, little Bloom?" Lyra said, her voice soft, confirming Elara's fears. She didn't need Elara to explain, she always knew. Elara nodded, sinking onto a woven stool by the fire. "More than quiet, grandmother. They're fading. The Lumina moss is dimming. The willows are silent. It feels like the vale is holding its breath." Lyra sighed, a sound like dry leaves rustling. She stirred the broth slowly, her gaze distant. "The Whis are bound to the heart of the vale, Elara. When their song falters, it means the vale itself is troubled." "But why?" Elara asked, her voice tight with worry. "Has something happened? Is it the season? Or something else?" Lyra shook her head slowly. "How? Not the seasons. The vale has seen many cycles of sun and frost, and the Whis have always sung. This feels different." A deeper silence. She paused, then looked at Elara, a spark of ancient knowing in her eyes. "There are tales, Elara, of times long past when the Whis have waned, times when the veil between our world and the realm beyond grows thin, and something pulls at their essence." "The realm beyond," Elara whispered, a shiver running down her spine. The Vale of Whispering Bloom was her entire world. The thought of anything beyond its protective mountains was both daunting and alluring. "Aye," Lyra confirmed. "The places where forgotten magic sleeps, but that is a story for another night. For now, we must understand what troubles Whis." She took a deep breath. "Have you noticed any particular direction where the silence feels strongest, or where the Whis seem to be drawn away from?" Elara closed her eyes, recalling her trek through the vale. "Yes," she said, opening them suddenly. "Near the silent peaks, the air there felt empty, like a vacuum. And the few Whis I saw seemed to be pulled towards it, not fluttering playfully but almost struggling, like moths caught in an unseen current. The silent peaks were the highest, most jagged mountains bordering the vale, their tops perpetually shrouded in mist. No one ventured there, not even Lyra. Tales spoke of ancient petrified giants, and winds that stole your voice." Lyra's brow furrowed. "The silent peaks," she murmured, a flicker of concern in her eyes. "That is unexpected. They've always been a place of stillness, but never one that draws the Whis. It is a place of endings, not beginnings." She placed the ladle down, her gaze now fixed on the flickering flames of the hearth. "There's an old story, passed down through my ancestors, of a time when the Whis nearly vanished entirely. It spoke of a heartstone, a crystal said to pulse with the very essence of the Vale's magic, hidden deep within the mountains. If its light dimmed, so too did the Whis. A heartstone? Elara asked, her imagination already conjuring images of a glowing gem. Where is it? Lyra sighed. That, little bloom, is the question. The stories say it was protected by ancient guardians, long since passed from this world, and its location was known only to a select few, entrusted with its care. She looked at Elara, her gaze softening. You have the keenest sight for the Whis, Elara. If they are being drawn towards the silent peaks, perhaps that is where the heartstone lies, and perhaps its light is faltering. Elara felt a thrill, cold and sharp, mixed with the worry in her stomach. This was more than just a quiet day in the Vale. This was a challenge, a mystery that touched the very core of her home. I can go, she offered, her voice firm despite the tremor in her hands. I can follow the Whis. They'll show me the way. Lyra studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Perhaps you can, but the silent peaks are not like our gentle Vale. The magic there is different, older, and not always kind. You will need protection. She rose and moved to a small hidden alcove in the wall, pulling aside a tapestry woven with shimmering threads. From behind it, she took out a small, intricately carved wooden box. Inside, nestled on a bed of dried lumina moss, lay a single smooth riverstone, no larger than Elara's thumb. It wasn't glowing, but it seemed to absorb and reflect the ambient light with an unusual depth. Around it, coiled like a tiny serpent, was a delicate silver chain. This is a moonglow stone, Lyra explained, lifting it carefully. It was carved by your great-great-grandmother, a Whis seer like yourself. It does not glow on its own, but it absorbs the light of the Whis. The stronger the Whis, the brighter it will shine. It will be your guide, Elara, your compass in the silence. And its silver chain will protect you from the harsh currents you might find beyond the Vale's gentle heart. Elara reached out, her fingers brushing the cool, smooth stone. It felt warm, almost alive, under her touch. She felt a faint hum emanating from it, a resonance with her own spirit. Wear it, Lyra instructed, fastening the chain around Elara's neck. The moonglow stone settled against her chest, surprisingly light. And, take this. Lyra then handed her a small dried pouch filled with fragrant herbs. These are sleep thistle and sun-kissed fern. If the air grows too heavy, or your path too unclear, crush a few leaves and breathe deeply. They will clear your mind and sharpen your senses. Elara looked at her grandmother, her heart pounding with a mix of fear and determination. I will find the heartstone, grandmother. I will bring the Whis back. Lyra smiled, a rare, tender smile that softened the ancient lines on her face. I know you will, little bloom. Remember, the Whis speak not with words but with feelings, with glimpses, with the very fabric of magic. Listen with your heart, and they will guide you. The next morning, before the sun had fully crested the mountains, Elara prepared for her journey. She packed a small satchel with dried fruit, a flask of fresh spring water, and the herb pouch Lyra had given her. The moonglow stone lay cool against her skin, and she felt a faint, almost imperceptible warmth emanating from it, the faint echo of the few Whis that still lingered near the cottage. She hugged Lyra tightly, feeling the frail strength of her grandmother's embrace. Be safe, Elara, Lyra whispered, her voice thick with unstated worry. And remember where your heart lies. Elara nodded, then turned and stepped out into the pre-dawn gloom. The Vale was quieter than she had ever known it. The familiar hum was almost entirely gone, replaced by a profound stillness. Even the night owls seemed to mute their calls. She walked towards the silent peaks, her eyes scanning the air for any sign of the shimmering currents. At first, there was nothing. The moonglow stone remained stubbornly dark. Doubt began to creep in, cold and unwelcome. Had she been wrong? Had the Whis vanished entirely? Then, as she reached the edge of the whispering willows where the path began to narrow and climb, she saw it. A single, faint wisp of shimmering light, barely visible, drifting like a lost feather. It was moving slowly, purposefully, towards the towering, mist-shrouded peaks. Elara's heart leaped. Hope, bright and fierce, surged through her. She quickened her pace, following the solitary Whis. As she drew closer, another appeared, Then another, thin and fragile, but unmistakably there. They were like faint, shimmering breadcrumbs, leading her deeper into the mountains. The moon glow stone around her neck began to pulse with a faint, almost imperceptible warmth, a tiny spark of light deep within its core. It was barely visible, but it was there. A silent confirmation. The path grew steeper, the familiar, comforting trees of the vale giving way to gnarled, twisted pines that clung precariously to the rocky slopes. The air grew colder, thinner. The gentle, life-affirming magic of the vale receded, replaced by a raw, untamed energy that prickled at Elara's skin. She pressed on, her eyes fixed on the faint, shimmering trails of the Whis. They were becoming a little more numerous now, still faint, but coalescing into a discernible current, like an invisible river flowing uphill. The moon glow stone pulsed a little brighter, a steady, rhythmic thrum against her chest. Hours passed. The sun climbed high, then began its slow descent. Elara climbed higher still, her legs aching, her breath coming in ragged gasps. The landscape grew starker, all rock and ice, with only the hardiest lichens clinging to life. The mist, which had seemed so distant from the vale, now swirled around her, damp and cold. Suddenly, the path opened onto a narrow ledge overlooking a vast hidden chasm. The mist thickened here, swirling in churning eddies, but through a momentary break, Elara saw it. A gaping maw in the side of the mountain, a dark, silent cave entrance, shrouded in shadow. And from within that darkness, a faint, almost imperceptible glow emanated. The Whis which had been guiding her now streamed towards the cave entrance in a desperate, frantic current, no longer drifting but pulled with an undeniable force. They were like a river being sucked into a drain, their shimmering forms stretching and distorting as they vanished into the gloom. The moonglow stone around Elara's neck flared, a distinct warm light now visible within its core, pulsing with urgency. This was it. The source of the silence, the place where the Whis were being drawn. The heartstone, perhaps, or whatever was affecting it. The cave beckoned, dark and mysterious, a promise of answers and a hint of deeper secrets yet to be uncovered. Elara took a deep breath, adjusted her satchel, and stepped forward, towards the mouth of the silent caves, into the heart of the mist, and the unknown. Elara stepped forward, the mist coiling around her ankles like spectral serpents. The air grew immediately cooler, carrying the scent of damp earth and ancient stone, rather than the forest's vibrant petrichor. The light from her amulet pulsed more rapidly now, a steady, rhythmic thrum against her skin, casting a soft, golden halo that barely pierced the shroud of white. Within the cave's mouth the mist thickened, swallowing the last vestiges of daylight, plunging her into a world of impenetrable gray. The silence here was absolute, heavier than any she had known. It pressed in on her ears, a physical weight that muffled even the sound of her own breathing. It was not merely an absence of sound, but an active, consuming void, a stillness that felt wrong. It was the kind of silence that made the small hairs on her arms stand on end, that whispered of things too old and too vast to comprehend. She reached out a hand, feeling for the cave wall. Her fingers met slick, cold rock, rough with centuries of mineral deposits. She shuffled forward, one cautious step at a time, her satchel bumping gently against her hip. The cave floor was uneven, sometimes soft with damp soil, sometimes hard and slippery with moss-covered stone. Every instinct screamed at her to turn back, to flee this unnatural quiet, but the pulse of the amulet, a beacon of purpose, urged her onward. As she delved deeper, the mist began to thin, not dissipating entirely, but rather retreating into pockets and tendrils that clung to the ceiling in deeper crevices. What remained was a profound darkness, broken only by the shimmering light of her amulet. It illuminated a cavern of immense proportions, its ceiling lost somewhere in the gloom above, its walls stretching away into unfathomable distances. Stalactites like frozen tears hung from the unseen roof, and stalagmites rose from the floor like jagged teeth, their surfaces glinting faintly with captured moisture. The air grew heavy, thick with an almost palpable magical energy that felt stagnant. It was like breathing in air from a forgotten tomb, laden with the weight of ages. Elara found herself slowing her pace, her gaze sweeping the cavern, searching for any sign, any clue. The silence, though still potent, felt less like a suffocating blanket and more like a vast empty chamber waiting to be filled. Then, she saw them. Not the vibrant dancing motes of light she knew, but faint, shimmering outlines, trapped within the very fabric of the cave walls. They were like echoes, ghostly impressions of Whis, frozen in motion, their forms elongated and distorted, as if stretched thin by an unseen force. Some were caught mid-flight, their tiny wings barely visible, others seemed to be pressed into the stone, their luminous essence dimmed to a mere whisper of light. A pang of sorrow, sharp and unexpected, pierced Ilara's heart. These were the Whis, the silent ones, drawn here and then, immobilized. Her amulet flared brighter, its warmth spreading from her neck, down her arm, and into her fingertips. It was communicating, aching with the plight of its kin. Ilara reached out, her hand hovering inches from one of the trapped Whis echoes. It was a pale blue, caught in a graceful arc, its light so faint it was barely perceptible. As her hand drew near, a faint tremor ran through the stone, and the blue echo flickered, as if trying to respond. A whisper, so faint it might have been only her imagination, seemed to brush against her mind, a fleeting impression of sorrow and longing. "I'm here," Ilara whispered, her voice sounding unnaturally loud in the profound quiet. "I'm here to help." She continued deeper, following a winding path that seemed to be etched into the cavern floor, a natural passage worn smooth by ancient flows of water, or perhaps by countless feet over millennia. The trapped Whis echoes became more frequent, embedded in every surface, their silent plea echoing in her heart. They were not merely trapped in the stone, but seemed to be a part of it, their essence woven into the very structure of the cave. It was as if the cave itself was drinking their light, absorbing their song, leaving behind only these hollow impressions. The air grew colder, and a faint shimmering frost began to appear on the cave walls, glittering like scattered diamonds in the amulet's glow. This was not natural frost. It hummed with a cold, oppressive magic, a drain on warmth and light. Ilara pulled her cloak tighter, her breath misting in the frigid air. The path narrowed, leading her into a series of smaller, interconnected chambers, each one progressively colder and more permeated by the ghostly Whis echoes. In one chamber, she found a strange formation, a cluster of stalagmites and stalactites that had grown together, forming a hollow column. Within its translucent crystal, a larger, more distinct Whis echo was trapped, pulsing with a faint, rhythmic beat. It was larger than the others, perhaps an elder Whis, or one of exceptional power. Its light was a deep, resonant gold, dimmed but not extinguished. As Ilara approached, the golden Whis echo pulsed faster, and she felt a faint pressure behind her eyes, a whisper of a thought, clearer than before. "A cold. So cold. The song. Gone. Gone." Ilara pressed her hand against the crystal column. The cold seeped into her skin, but the amulet on her neck pulsed with renewed vigor, pushing against the chill. For a moment, she felt a connection, a shared sorrow, and a glimmer of hope. The Whis was not completely lost, merely held captive. "I hear you," she murmured, her voice filled with resolve. "I'll find a way." The path descended further, spiraling downwards into the very bowels of the earth. The air became thick with minerals, tasting of iron and damp rock. The silence here was almost deafening, a vacuum that threatened to pull her senses inward. The frost on the walls grew thicker, crystalline formations that resembled intricate, frozen lace. Within these delicate structures, the Whis echoes were more numerous, their ghostly forms woven into the very ice, like insects trapped in amber. Suddenly, the path opened into an enormous, circular cavern. And here, the source of the draining magic was undeniable. In the center of the cavern, a vast obsidian obelisk rose from the floor, piercing the unseen ceiling. It was impossibly smooth, jet black, and radiated an intense, unnatural cold that seemed to absorb all light and warmth. Around its base, swirling like a silent, ghostly storm, were thousands upon thousands of Whis echoes. They were not merely trapped in the stone, but were being actively drawn into the obelisk, their forms elongated and stretched, their light fading as they neared its dark surface. It was a horrifying sight, a slow, agonizing consumption of pure light and joy. The obelisk hummed with a low, resonant thrum, a vibration that Ilara felt in her bones, a counterpoint to the silence, a silent song of absorption. The light from her own amulet flickered wildly, struggling against the oppressive pull of the obsidian. The warmth in her neck intensified, almost burning, as if the amulet itself was in pain, fighting against the dark magic. As Elara stared aghast, she noticed something else. The obelisk was not entirely featureless. Intricate carvings, almost invisible against the black stone, spiraled up its sides. They were not the elegant, flowing lines of the Whis, but sharp, angular symbols, alien and unsettling. And at the very base of the obelisk, embedded within its dark heart, was a single pulsating gem. It was not the heartstone she had imagined. This gem was dull, devoid of light, but it pulsed with a faint, malevolent energy. It was a dark mirror to the heartstone, a void that seemed to drink light rather than radiate. And as she watched, a single brilliant blue Whis echo was drawn towards it, its light dimming, shrinking, until it was absorbed entirely into the gem, leaving behind only a faint, chilling tremor in the air. A wave of despair threatened to overwhelm Elara. So many Whis, their essence stolen, their songs silenced. This was a tragedy far grander and more terrible than she had imagined. "No," she whispered, her voice trembling but firm. "No, I won't let you." She took a step forward, then another, her gaze fixed on the obelisk. The cold was biting, raising goosebumps on her skin. But the fiery determination in her heart, fueled by the amulet's urgent pulse, warmed her from within. As she drew closer, the obsidian surface seemed to ripple, and the angular carvings began to glow with a faint, sickly green light. Suddenly, a voice, ancient and dry as crumbling parchment, echoed through the cavern, seeming to emanate from the very stone itself. "Who dares disturb the silence of the deep?" Elara spun around, her heart leaping into her throat. She saw nothing but the vast, dark cavern, the towering obelisk, and the myriad of trapped Whis echoes. "Show yourself," she demanded, a voice barely a tremor against the cavern's immense silence. A chuckle like stones grinding together reverberated through the air. "No need, child. I am all around you. I am the guardian of this sacred slumber. I am Morwen." As the name resonated, patches of the cavern wall began to shift, the rough stone dissolving into a swirling pattern of grey mist and shadow, coalescing into a form. Slowly, painfully, a figure emerged from the rock. It was a being of immense age, seemingly carved from the cave itself. Its body was gnarled and twisted, like an ancient tree root, its skin the color of granite, its eyes glowing with a faint, phosphorescent green light. It was humanoid in shape, but with elongated limbs and fingers that ended in sharp crystalline claws. Its face was a landscape of deep fissures and crags, topped by a crown of jagged crystalline formations that resembled stalagmites. "A mortal," Morwen rasped, its voice a grating whisper. "So fragile, so fleeting. What brings you to this hallowed place of quiet?" "You're draining the Whis," Elara accused, pointing a trembling finger at the obelisk. "You're stealing their light, silencing their songs." Morwen's head, slow and deliberate, turned towards the obelisk, its glowing eyes seeming to take in the swirling forms of the trapped Whis. "Draining? Stealing? No, child. I'm simply restoring balance. The Whis have grown too loud, too numerous. Their incessant chatter, their chaotic light, it disrupts the ancient harmony. The Heartstone was never meant to fuel such rampant exuberance." "That's not true," Elara retorted, a surge of anger giving her courage. "The Whis are essential. They bring joy and life. They are the very pulse of the forest." "And what of the pulse of the earth?" Morwen countered, its voice growing colder, sharper. "The silent song of the deep roots, the slow thrum of the living stone. Does their song not deserve precedence? For too long the surface world has reveled in its fleeting light, forgetting the deep, resonant silence that nurtures all things. I merely gather that which has been scattered, and return it to its rightful place, the heart of the earth, from whence all energy flows." Morwen gestured towards the obsidian obelisk with a clawed hand. "This is the heart of silence, a counterpoint to your heartstone. It draws in the excess, cleanses the chaotic, and restores the pristine stillness. Here, the Whis find their true purpose, to become the quiet strength, the subtle hum beneath the surface, rather than the frivolous dance above." Elara looked from Morwen to the trapped Whis. There was no joy in their silence, only sorrow and fading light. "This isn't strength. This is imprisonment," You're killing them. Killing? Morven scoffed, a sound like dry leaves rustling. They are merely reabsorbed. Their essence returned to the grand cycle. It is the way of the deep. Everything returns to the earth in time. But not like this. Elara's amulet flared, a brilliant burst of golden light that momentarily pushed back the oppressive cold. The trapped Whis echoes around the obelisk pulsed faintly in response, a collective sigh of longing. The Heartstone gives life, it doesn't take it away. The Heartstone is but one facet, Morin replied, its green eyes narrowing, reflecting the amulet's glow with a cold, analytical gleam. It is a conduit, a vessel, and sometimes, vessels overflow. I am the hand that turns the tap, ensuring the reservoir does not burst. Who are you, truly? Elara asked, trying to understand, to find a crack in Morwen's logic. Why are you doing this? I am the ancient spirit of these caves, the voice of the deep earth, Morwen stated, a hint of ancient pride in its raspy voice. For eons I have watched the balance, and for eons the Whis have grown unchecked, their frivolous light spreading like a weed. The Heartstone, once a sacred source of gentle energy, became a fountain of unbridled chaos. It needed to be tempered. This obelisk, the heart of silence, was crafted by ancient hands, long before your kind walked the surface, to maintain that balance. It was dormant for centuries until the Whis cracked the shroud. So, you just decided to take away everyone's light and joy? Elara's voice was sharp, cutting through the chilling silence. Without asking, without understanding what you were destroying? Understanding. How do I need to understand? Morven's form seemed to ripple, growing slightly taller, its crystalline crown gleaming menacingly. I understand the slow, patient wisdom of the earth. The surface dwellers, with their fleeting lives and loud desires, they understand nothing of true power, true permanence. The Whis were distracting them, encouraging a superficial existence. Their silencing is a necessary step for a deeper awakening, a return to the profound truths found only in stillness. But the forest is dying, Elara cried, tears pricking at her eyes. The plants are wilting, the animals are confused, the streams are stagnant. The Whis are the lifeblood. Without them, everything will fade. Morven tilted its head, a gesture that was unsettlingly human on its stony form. A temporary recalibration. The forest will adapt. It will learn to draw its sustenance from the deeper well springs, the silent energies of the earth, rather than relying on the ephemeral whims of light sprites. Elara shook her head vehemently. No, I won't let you destroy them. I have to stop you. Morwen emitted another grating chuckle. A slip of a girl with a flickering trinket believes she can defy the will of the ancient deep? You are brave, foolish child, but this place is not for you. The heart of silence protects itself, and I, its guardian, will ensure its work continues. As Morven finished speaking, the ground beneath Elara's feet began to tremble. The green light radiating from the obelisk's carvings intensified, pulsing with a slow, deliberate rhythm. The air grew even colder, and she felt a powerful, invisible pressure pushing against her, trying to force her back. The Whis echoes caught in the obelisk's pull seemed to stretch further, their forms almost translucent now, their light barely a memory. Elara clutched her amulet. It burned against her skin, a protective warmth, a defiant light against the encroaching darkness. She could feel the collective agony of the Whis, a silent scream resonating within her own heart. She had to do something. But what? Morven was an ancient spirit, seemingly made of the earth itself, and the obelisk pulsed with an overwhelming, oppressive magic. She noticed, however, that the obsidian obelisk, for all its power, did not radiate energy outward, but rather inward. It was a drain, a vacuum, not an emitter of destructive force. Its power came from what it absorbed, what it silenced. If she could disrupt that absorption. Her gaze fell on the dull gem at the base of the obelisk, the point where the Whis essence was being fully absorbed. It was the heart of silence. You speak of balance, Elara said, her voice clear despite the tremor in the earth. But you are creating an imbalance of your own. You are taking all the light, and leaving only cold, dead silence. Morven's green eyes glowed brighter. The balance will be found, child. The light will learn its place. Now, leave this sacred space, or become part of the silent harmony yourself. With a low groan, the stony ground around Morwen began to rise, forming jagged, crystalline spikes that shot out towards Alara like grasping fingers. She darted back, narrowly avoiding one that scraped against her cloak. The spikes were not fast, but they were relentless, slowly enclosing her, trying to herd her towards the obsidian obelisk. Alara knew she couldn't fight Morwen directly. Its power was too vast, too connected to the very fabric of the cave. She needed to disrupt the obelisk. But how could she reach the gem at its base, surrounded as it was by the swirling, draining Whis echoes and Morwen's stony defenses? Her amulet, which had been pulsating erratically, now settled into a steady, powerful thrum. A strange sensation bloomed in her chest, a warmth that spread through her veins, tingling at her fingertips. It wasn't just the amulet glowing. O'Shea was glowing. A faint golden aura began to emanate from her, pushing back the cold, illuminating the cavern with a soft, defiant light. It was the same light she had seen in the Whis, but amplified, focused, flowing through her. The trapped Whis echoes around the obelisk shimmered, some of them brightening ever so slightly, as if drawing strength from her. A chorus of silent whispers of hope and urgent plea resonated in her mind, clearer than ever before. They were reaching out to her, lending her their collective fading strength. Alara raised her hands instinctively. The golden light intensified, swirling around her, forming delicate patterns in the air. She felt a connection not just to her amulet but to all the Whis, to the Heartstone itself. She was a conduit, channeling their essence, their longing for song. "You cause," Alara said, her voice ringing with newfound power, her golden aura pushing back the advancing stone spikes. "But it is life, and life finds a way." She focused her will, guided by the insistent pulse of the amulet and the silent cries of the Whis. She wasn't sure what she was doing, only that she had to break the obelisk's hold. She felt the energy gather in her hands, shimmering, coalescing. It was a pure, unadulterated light, the very essence of the Whis, channeled through her own growing magical affinity. She lunged forward, not towards Morwen, but towards the obelisk. The stone spikes snapped at her heels, but she moved with a sudden agility she didn't know she possessed, sidestepping their slow, deliberate attacks. The cold from the obelisk was intense, trying to freeze her, but the golden aura around her burned even brighter, creating a small pocket of warmth. She reached the base of the obelisk, the swirling Whis echoes pressing in on her, their forms flickering with desperate hope. The dull gem, the heart of silence, pulsed malevolently. With a cry of determination, Alara thrust her hands forward, directing the concentrated golden energy towards the gem. It was like a miniature sun bursting forth from her palms, a focused beam of pure Whis light. The beam struck the dull gem with a soundless impact. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then, a faint crack appeared on the gem's surface. Morwen roared, a sound like an avalanche. "Stop, you fool, you will shatter the balance." The obelisk vibrated violently, the green light from its carvings flaring erratically. The crystalline spikes around Alara intensified their assault, moving faster, threatening to impale her. But Alara held firm, her eyes closed in concentration, pouring every ounce of her will and the Whis-channeled essence into the golden beam. The crack in the gem widened, spiderwebbing across its surface. The dullness began to recede, revealing a faint inner glow, not a vibrant light, but a painful fractured glimmer. The absorption of the Whis echoes faltered, the swirling forms around the obelisk momentarily freezing in place. "You cannot destroy what is ancient," Morwen shrieked, its form dissolving and reforming, trying to manifest closer to Alara, but held back by the sheer power of the golden light she was channeling. The gem fractured further, the inner light growing brighter, pulsing with frantic, confused energy. It was like a dam breaking, but not yet releasing its full power. The essence of the Whis held captive was struggling to burst free. Alara felt a sudden sharp pain in her chest, a drain on her own energy. The power she was channeling was immense, pushing her to her limits. But she could not stop. Not now. With a final desperate surge, she poured the last of her channeled energy into the gem. There was a deafening cry-cracky that echoed through the cavern, not a sound of impact, but of something ancient breaking apart. The dull gem at the base of the obelisk shattered into 1,000 glittering fragments, scattering across the cavern floor like dark rain. As the gem broke, the obsidian obelisk itself pulsed, one last violent time, the green light from its carvings flaring into a blinding flash. Then, with a shudder, the obelisk went dark, its unnatural cold receding almost instantly. The silence which had been so absolute now felt different. It was no longer an oppressive void, but a vast, empty canvas. And then, it began. A single, faint EG ping, like a tiny bell, barely audible. Then, another. And another. From the fragments of the shattered gem, from the surfaces of the now inert obelisk, and from the very walls of the cavern, shimmering motes of light began to emerge. They were the Whis, released from their silent captivity. At first, they were hesitant, small, flickering. But then, as if realizing their freedom, they burst forth in a silent explosion of color. Blues, greens, golds, purples, reds, thousands upon thousands of them, swirling and dancing, filling the cavern with a soft ethereal glow. The air thrummed with their silent songs, a symphony of light and joy that washed over Ilara, healing the pain in her chest, filling her with warmth and profound relief. The Whis, free, circled her, their tiny forms brushing against her, offering silent thanks, their light mingling with her own fading aura. Morven, the ancient guardian, was nowhere to be seen. Its form had dissolved with the shattering of the gem, seemingly reabsorbed into the cave walls, leaving behind only echoes of its stony presence. Perhaps it too had been bound to the heart of silence, and with its destruction, had returned to slumber. Ilara stood amidst the swirling silent chorus of the freed Whis, her body trembling with exhaustion, but her heart soaring. She had done it. She had broken the heart of silence. But as the initial euphoria began to fade, a new realization settled in. The Whis were free, yes, but their light, though present, still felt muted. Their silent songs, while beautiful, lacked the vibrant, resonant power she remembered from the Heartstone's full glory. And the Heartstone itself, though no longer actively drained by the obelisk, was still shrouded in its own silence, its connection to the Whis not fully restored. The true Heartstone, the life-giving source, was still awaiting her, somewhere deeper perhaps, or now that the drain was gone, simply waiting to be reawakened. This was a victory, a crucial first step, but not the end of her quest. The forest still needed its full song, its vibrant pulse. Ilara looked at the swirling Whis, their silent joy filling the cavern. She knew what she had to do next. She had restored their freedom, but now she needed to restore their voice, and in doing so, revive the Heartstone and the entire Whispering Woods. Her journey was far from over. The Heartstone awaited, and with it, the true restoration of the Whispering Woods. Ilara took a deep, steadying breath, feeling the last echoes of the Whis' gratitude and a renewed sense of purpose. Her path lay forward, towards the source of the Heartstone's true power, a power that now, finally, had a chance to bloom once more. Her path lay forward, towards the source of the Heartstone's true power, a power that now, finally, had a chance to bloom once more. Ilara continued deeper into the Whispering Woods, guided not by a map, but by an intuitive pull, a faint hum that resonated within her, growing stronger with every step. The forest around her began to shift, as if responding to the renewed hope she carried. The air grew sweeter, scented with a myriad of blossoms she couldn't name, and the light filtering through the canopy took on a richer, more vibrant hue. Moss, once a dull, muted green, now pulsed with a soft, ethereal luminescence, tracing glowing pathways across the forest floor. Ancient trees, their bark gnarled and wise, seemed to lean in, their branches rustling with a gentle curiosity, no longer laden with the heavy silence that had plagued them. Strange, jewel-toned insects with wings like stained glass flitted between the leaves, leaving trails of sparkling dust. Small, unseen creatures scampered in the undergrowth, their movements light and free. Ilara felt a subtle shift in the very fabric of the woods, a quiet awakening, a stir of anticipation that mirrored her own. The terrain became more challenging, yet strangely inviting. She navigated through groves of towering, silver-barked trees whose leaves shimmered like polished emeralds, and across streams whose waters sang a melodic tune as they tumbled over smooth, ancient stones. Sometimes the path narrowed to a mere suggestion, winding through thickets of thornless roses that unfurled petals of iridescent blues and purples. At other times it opened into vast sun-dappled clearings where ancient lichen-covered standing stones hummed with a forgotten power, their surfaces etched with symbols that seemed to writhe and dance in her peripheral vision. As she ventured further, the whispers of the freed Whis, though still faint and distant, seemed to coalesce, forming a gentle, guiding chorus in her mind. It wasn't a voice she could understand with words, but a feeling, a direction, a growing sense of the Heartstone's magnetic pull. It was as if the forest itself was breathing with a deeper, more rhythmic pulse, drawing her into its very heart. Days blurred into a timeless journey. She subsisted on wild berries that tasted of pure sunlight and dew, and water from crystal-clear springs that invigorated her spirit. Sleep came easily beneath the embrace of ancient trees, her dreams filled with swirling colors and the nascent melodies of the woods. Her connection to the forest deepened with each passing moment. She could feel the subtle shift of the earth beneath her feet, the whisper of the wind through the leaves, the slow, steady flow of sap within the trees. She felt less like an outsider traversing the woods, and more like a part of its intricate tapestry. One morning, as the first rays of dawn painted the sky in hues of rose and gold, Elara emerged from a dense thicket into a clearing unlike any she had seen before. At its center stood a colossal, ancient tree, its trunk wider than a small cottage, its branches reaching skyward like the arms of a slumbering giant. This was the grandfather oak, the oldest living entity in the Whispering Woods, its bark a tapestry of deep, fissured gray, adorned with patches of glowing moss that pulsed with a slow, steady rhythm. The air around it vibrated with an immense, palpable energy, a silent thrum that made Elara's teeth ache with its intensity. But guarding the path to the grandfather oak, or rather, the hidden entrance she instinctively knew lay beneath its roots, was an unexpected sight. A towering figure, seemingly sculpted from the very rock of the earth, sat cross-legged before the tree. Its form was rough-hewn, its features indistinct, but its eyes, two glowing emeralds set deep within its stony face, were fixed upon Elara with an ancient, unwavering gaze. This was the Stone Guardian, a mythical sentinel whispered about in the oldest forest lore, said to protect the most sacred places from those unworthy. Elara stopped, her heart thumping a quick rhythm against her ribs. The Guardian did not move, did not speak, yet its presence was overwhelming, a silent challenge that permeated the very air. She felt no malice, only an immense, ancient patience, a deep sense of waiting. "Greetings, Guardian," Elara said, her voice clear despite the tremor of awe she felt. "I seek the Heartstone. I have come to help restore the Whispering Woods." The Stone Guardian remained motionless for a long moment, its emerald eyes unblinking. Then a voice, deep and resonant like the grinding of mountains, rumbled through the clearing, vibrating through the very ground beneath Elara's feet. "Many seek the Heartstone. Many claim noble purpose. Few understand its true nature. What is the Heartstone, little one, to those who do not hear its song?" Elara took a steadying breath. The Heartstone is the voice of the Whis, their collective song made manifest. It is the lifeblood of the forest, weaving their whispers into a symphony that sustains every leaf, every root, every creature. When their voices faded, the Heartstone fell silent, and the woods began to wither. "A common observation," the Guardian rumbled. "But what is a voice? Is it mere sound? A vibration in the air?" Elara considered. "No, voice is more than that. It is expression. It is connection. For the Whis, it is their essence, their way of communicating their joy, their sorrow, their wisdom, their very being. It is how they participate in the life of the forest, how they give and receive. Without it, they are isolated, adrift, unable to contribute their part to the grand chorus. And if their voice returns," the Guardian continued, its gaze piercing, "will the Heartstone simply sing again? Is it merely a forgotten instrument waiting to be played?" "No," Elara said, feeling the answer coalesce within her. "The Heartstone is not just an instrument. It is the heart itself. It needs to beat, to pulse with the collective life force of the Whis. It needs to feel their voices, not just hear them. It needs to be understood, to be nourished by their shared experience, their harmony, their joy." The silence wasn't just a symptom of their lost voices. It was the starvation of the Heartstone itself. To restore it, we must not just give the Whis back their voices, but help them remember. A low, rumbling sound, almost like a sigh, emanated from the stone guardian. The emerald eyes seemed to soften, and a faint, ancient smile, like a crack in rock, appeared on its stony face. You understand, little one. You see beyond the surface into the true heart of the matter. The Heartstone does not merely reflect the Whis' voices, it is their conduit, their amplifier, their very soul. To awaken it, one must not only provide the song but awaken its own memory of how to sing it. Slowly, with a sound like shifting earth, the stone guardian began to rise. Its massive form unfolded, revealing a hidden passage that opened into the gnarled roots of the grandfather oak. The passage was dark, but a soft shimmering light, like captured starlight, beckoned from within. The way is open, the guardian rumbled. Go, Elara. The Heartstone awaits. May your purpose ring true. With a nod of gratitude, Elara stepped into the cool, damp embrace of the passage. The air immediately grew heavy with magic, ancient and profound. The shimmering light intensified, revealing walls carved from the living roots of the grandfather oak, pulsing with faint, golden veins. The passage spiraled downwards, deeper and deeper into the earth, the hum in Elara's chest growing into a vibrant thrum. Finally, the passage opened into a vast cavernous grotto, a hidden chamber beneath the roots of the ancient tree. The space was immense, yet felt intimate, cocooned. The ceiling was a dome of interwoven roots, from which crystalline stalactites hung, dripping with luminous sap that collected in shimmering pools on the cavern floor. The entire grotto glowed with a soft ethereal light, emanating from the very heart of the chamber. And there it was. The Heartstone. It wasn't a single stone, but a magnificent cluster of intertwined crystals, towering perhaps twice Elara's height. They glowed with a faint internal luminescence, like embers long past their prime. Each crystal was unique in shape and size, but they were all connected, forming a breathtaking organic sculpture. They pulsed with a slow, almost imperceptible rhythm, a weak, dying heartbeat. The colors within them, once vibrant and shifting, were now muted, faded echoes of their former glory, pale blues, gentle greens, soft, dusty golds. The Heartstone was beautiful, majestic, but undeniably dormant, a sleeping giant waiting to be awakened. Elara approached reverently, her hand outstretched but not quite touching. She could feel the immense ancient power within the crystals, a power that was simply waiting. It wasn't dead, just profoundly asleep, starved of the vibrant energy it was meant to channel. She closed her eyes, placing her hands gently on the cool, smooth surface of one of the smaller crystals. A faint warmth spread through her palms, a whisper of connection. She reached out with her mind, with her spirit, trying to understand. The Heartstone, as the Guardian had said, was more than just a receiver. It was the great amplifier, the orchestrator of the forest's song. It didn't just collect the Whis' voices, it wove them together, harmonized them, and then sent that grand, life-giving symphony rippling through the entire whispering woods. The silence of the Whis had not merely deprived the forest of sound, it had starved the Heartstone of the very material it needed to perform its sacred function. The Heartstone had forgotten how to sing, because it had forgotten the tune. Elara understood now. She needed to help the Heartstone remember. She needed to provide not just a few whispers, but the recency of the Whis collective song, a resonance that would stir the Heartstone's ancient memory and reignite its core purpose. She took a deep breath, centering herself. She thought of the first Whis she had freed, their trembling whispers growing into joyous chirps. She thought of the gratitude she had felt, the surge of hope as their voices returned. She remembered the unique qualities of each Whis she had encountered, the gentle sigh of the willow Whis, the rustling chuckle of the birch Whis, the deep, resonant hum of the oak Whis. Each one was a unique note in a grand forgotten melody. Elara closed her eyes again, focusing all her will, all her empathy, all her connection to the whispering woods. She extended her awareness, reaching out beyond the grotto, beyond the grandfather oak, to the scattered Whis throughout the forest. She imagined their newly freed voices, still tentative in some places, growing stronger in others. She imagined their gratitude, their longing for connection. Then, Elara began to hum. It wasn't a tune she knew, but one that seemed to rise from deep within her, an intuitive melody born of the forest itself. It was a soft, wordless song, a gentle vibration that filled the grotto. As she hummed, she channeled her own innate magic, her unique connection to the woods, into the heartstone. She wasn't just humming, she was each willing the heartstone to remember, to open itself to the burgeoning chorus of the Whis. At first, nothing happened. The heartstone remained muted, its faint glow unwavering. Doubt, cold and insidious, began to creep in. Was her connection enough? Was her song strong enough to stir something so ancient and profound? Then, a faint shimmer appeared on the surface of one of the crystals, a fleeting ripple of pale green. Elara redoubled her efforts, pouring more of her heart into the hum. She envisioned the Whis, not just individually, but as a vast interconnected network, their root systems intertwined, their branches reaching for the same sun. She imagined their voices not as separate sounds, but as threads of light, weaving together into a vibrant tapestry. And slowly, subtly, the heartstone began to respond. The faint glow within the crystals intensified, pulsing with a more noticeable rhythm. The muted colors began to deepen, hints of azure and emerald, amethyst and amber, appearing within their crystalline depths. A low, resonant thrum, a sound that seemed to come from the very earth itself, began to emanate from the heartstone, a counterpoint to Elara's hum. Elara felt the whispers of the freed Whis now stronger, reaching her. They weren't just random sounds, they were forming a nascent chorus, a gentle harmony, drawn by the awakening heartstone. She felt their hope, their wonder, their dawning understanding of what was happening. They were sending their voices, their gratitude, their very essence towards the source of their renewal. With a surge of renewed purpose, Elara pressed her hands more firmly against the heartstone. She closed her eyes and let her own voice rise, no longer a hum, but a clear, pure melody, a song of hope and connection. She was not just singing Ito the heartstone, she was singing with it, providing the initial spark, the memory of harmony it needed. As her song filled the grotto, a magnificent transformation began. The heartstone pulsed with ever-increasing brilliance. The once faint colors within the crystals deepened, swirled and intensified, becoming a kaleidoscope of shifting, vibrant hues. Light erupted from its core, not a blinding flash, but a soft, warm golden radiance that spread throughout the grotto, chasing away every shadow. And then, the sound. It began as a gentle murmur, a collective sigh of awakening. Then it swelled, growing in volume and complexity, a chorus of 1,000 voices, not just individual whispers, but a synchronized symphony. It was the sound of rustling leaves, of water trickling over stone, of wind chimes dancing in a gentle breeze, of deep, resonant hums, of joyous chirps, of the very breath of the forest. It was the song of the Whis, united and amplified by the heartstone, pouring forth with an overwhelming beauty that brought tears to Elara's eyes. The grotto vibrated with the sheer joyous power of it. The luminous sap on the stalactites began to drip faster, glowing brighter. The roots above pulsed with golden light, sending tremors of energy upwards, out into the forest. Elara felt a profound sense of completion, of harmony. The heartstone was no longer dormant. It was awake, alive, beating with the collective heart of the Whis. Its song surged outwards, a wave of vibrant magic that rippled through the earth, through the air, through every single leaf and branch of the whispering woods. Outside the grotto, the forest responded instantaneously. Colors intensified, becoming impossibly vivid. Flowers bloomed in an instant, unfurling petals of breathtaking beauty. Trees that had been stooped and weary straightened their branches, their leaves shimmering with renewed vitality. Animals stirred from their slumber, their eyes bright with wonder, their cries joining the chorus of the Whis. The streams sang louder, the air hummed with a tangible energy, and the very light of the sun seemed to shine with a purer, more golden hue. The Whis, throughout the entire forest, felt the surge. Their voices, once tentative, now soared with unbridled joy. They danced among their branches, their luminous forms weaving patterns of light, their individual melodies blending into the magnificent, life-affirming symphony orchestrated by the heartstone. They were connected again, truly connected, their shared song flowing through the heartstone, nourishing the entire forest, and in turn, being nourished by it. Elara slowly withdrew her hands from the now radiant heartstone. She felt a gentle lightness in her spirit, a peaceful calm that settled deep within her. Her energy was depleted, but her heart was full, overflowing with a quiet triumph. She had done it. She had restored their voice, and in doing so, revived the heartstone and the entire Whispering Woods. As she stood there, bathed in the golden light of the reawakened heartstone, 1,000 tiny luminous forms of the Whis began to gather in the grotto, drawn by the powerful magic. They floated around her, their soft, melodic whispers forming a chorus of gratitude that resonated directly in her heart. She didn't need words to understand their profound thanks, their boundless joy. They touched her with their ethereal light, a gentle blessing that filled her with warmth. The stone guardian, who had silently returned to the grotto entrance, bowed its massive head, its emerald eyes glowing with approval. "The heartstone sings again, Elara." Its voice rumbled, now softer, imbued with the forest's revived melody. "And the woods remember their song. You have brought harmony back to our ancient home." Elara smiled, a genuine radiant smile. "It was the whistle all along," she said, her voice a little hoarse from her efforts, but full of contentment. "I merely helped them remember how to sing it together." She knew her journey was truly complete. The Whispering Woods was alive again, vibrant and full of song. The heartstone, once a fading ember, now blazed with the glorious collective heart of the forest. As Elara emerged from the grotto and stepped back into the rejuvenated Whispering Woods, she felt a profound change within herself. She was no longer just the girl who had stumbled upon a forgotten magic. She was woven into the very fabric of the forest, a silent guardian, a listener to its ancient song. She didn't need to stay in the grotto, for the heartstone's melody now resonated within her, a part of her own being. She walked slowly through the revitalized forest, every step a dance with the living earth. The trees bowed gently as she passed, their leaves rustling with whispers of gratitude. The creatures of the woods greeted her with bright eyes and playful chirps. She could hear the Whis everywhere now, their joyous symphony filling the air, a constant, comforting presence. Elara found a quiet, sun-dappled glade, surrounded by towering, newly vibrant trees. She lay down on a bed of glowing moss, feeling the gentle pulse of the heartstone beneath her, woven into the very ground. She closed her eyes, listening to the eternal song of the Whispering Woods, a lullaby of life, harmony, and endless magic. And as the last rays of the setting sun painted the sky in hues of deep violet and shimmering gold, Elara drifted into a deep, peaceful sleep, knowing that the Whispering Woods would sing its beautiful song for all eternity, its heart beating strong and true, guided by the magic of connection, and watched over by the quiet girl who had helped it remember how to dream again.